William Shakespeare, the greatest playwright of all time. William Shakespeare, a name that needs no recognition, was the greatest dramatist of English literature. However, very few facts about his life are recorded, even if that is also a guess, and not certain. There is no authentic biography of Shakespeare available. Shakespeare was born on 23 April 1564 in Stratford, Warwickshire. Both his father, John Shakespeare, and his mother, Mary Arden, were uneducated. In his early life, perhaps Shakespeare attained grammar school where he learned some Latin and Greek. It is considered that he never went to high school or college. Nature was his teacher, and he had a deep insight through which he learned human nature. His works were mostly based on his imagination and his perception and experience of human life. When he was 14, due to his family's economic crisis, he had to leave his school to do some job to support his family. It is not clear what kind of job he had done. There is speculation that perhaps he was a school teacher or clerk of a lawyer. Shakespeare married life. Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway when he was 18 years old and she was 26. On 27 November 1582, the Diocese of Worcester's consistory court granted a permit for marriage. Two of Hathaway's neighbors placed bonds the following day ensuring that no legitimate claims would prevent the marriage. The Worcester Chancellor allowed the marriage banns to be read once rather than the customary 3 times, and 6 months after the wedding, and gave birth to a daughter, Susanna, who was baptized on 26 May 1583, suggesting that the ceremony may have been planned in some haste. Nearly 2 years later, son Hamnet and daughter Judith, who were twins, were baptized on 2 February 1585. At the age of 11, Hamnet passed away from unexplained circumstances and was buried on 11 August 1596. Shakespeare left little historical traces after the twins were born, and it wasn't until 1592 that he is acknowledged in connection with the London theatre scene. One exception is that his name can be found in the Complaints Bill of a legal proceeding before the Queen's Bench Court in Westminster from the Michaelmas term of 1588 and 9 October 1589. Many spurious legends have been recorded by biographers who are seeking to explain this period. Shakespeare's first biographer, Nicholas Rowe, recalled a local rumor that the playwright left Stratford for London to avoid being charged with deer poaching on the property of the town squire Thomas Lucy. Shakespeare is said to have written a malicious poem about Lucy as retaliation for her behavior. Shakespeare reportedly began his theatrical career in London by caring for theatregoers' horses. This is according to a different 18th century tale. Shakespeare was a village schoolteacher, according to John Aubrey. According to several 20th century academics, Alexander Houghton of Lancashire, a Catholic landowner who left a specific William Shakespeare in his bequest, may have hired Shakespeare as a schoolteacher. As Shakespeare was a well-known name in the Lancashire region, there isn't much evidence to support such claims other than hearsay gathered after his death. In London, he started his career as a helper in the theatre where he used to see the horses of the royal man, but soon he became an actor in Burbade's company. Only after 2 years, he started his work on writing plays. In starting, he worked with other writers and learnt the practical knowledge of writing. Then he started his writing with Love's Labour Lost and other early and immature plays. Gradually he attained maturity in writing and wrote the greatest plays of English drama. Shakespeare also wrote poetry and sonnets. His poetry Venus and Adonis, which was dedicated to the Earl of Southampton, became very popular. For this, he got a big amount of money that he invested in theatres and became a shareholder of Globe and Blackfriars theatres. In 1597 Shakespeare purchased the largest and finest house in Stratford. Afterwards, he also added some more property to extend his land, and finally, after retirement in 1611, he left London and settled in his hometown, Stratford. In the last years of his life, he wrote some plays that show a decline in his writings. He died on his birth anniversary on 23 April 1616. Some lines mention his tomb, I am giving below. Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and crossed be he that moves my bones. Shakespeare's tomb is considered a pilgrimage as thousands of his admirers come to Stratford to visit his tomb. Shakespeare never collected his work for publishing. He never thought that his plays were the greatest plays ever written. He always wrote to satisfy the audience, which was his primary motive. He faced his contemporary audience, answered its needs, and contrived a drama that the court appreciates, and the public enjoys, despite the competition of the beer gardens. After his death, Shakespeare's two fellow players gathered his work in the folio of 1623 and made it published. The folio consists of 36 plays. Works of Shakespeare. Shakespeare's works were written between the years 1588 to 1612. As he is the greatest dramatist of English literature, his highest achievement lies in the area of drama. However, Shakespeare has also written poems and sonnets, which have possessed a high place in the respective area. Shakespeare's works life is divided into 4 periods. The first period, 1588 to 1593, is known as the early and experimental. The plays of this period include some comedies like The Comedy of Errors, Love's Labour's Lost, and The Two Gentlemen of Verona. The historical plays of this period were Richard III, Richard II, and Henry VI, 3 parts. The 2 other plays are Romeo and Juliet and Titus Andronicus. In this period, Shakespeare also wrote 2 poems named Venus and Adonis and The Rape of Lucca. Shakespeare's work of this period was immature, as there was no depth of thought and imagination. The second period, 1594 to 1600, of Shakespeare's work was the period of great comedies, as well as the great historical, also called chronicle plays. The great comedies of this period were The Merchant of Venice, Much Ado About Nothing, As You Like It, and Twelfth Night. The historical plays of this period were Henry IV, Part 1 and Part 2, Henry V, and King John. Some other plays of this period were The Taming of the Shrew and The Merry Wives of Windsor. In this period, Shakespeare's improvement in his writing and his genius are shown. We can trace Shakespeare's humor in his great comedies. Through these works, Shakespeare's deep knowledge about human life and nature is reflected. The third period, 1601 to 1607, of Shakespeare's work was the period of his great tragedies as well as somber or bitter comedies. In this period, Shakespeare's genius was at its his greatest masterpiece was written in this period. However, in this period, he reflects the darker, sad and evil side of human nature, but it shows a high level of maturity and intellect. He wrote the best plays of his life during this period. His greatest 4 tragedies are Macbeth, Othello, Hamlet and King Lear. In this period, he also wrote Roman plays like Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra. His somber or bitter comedies of this period are All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure and Troilus and Cressida. Some other plays of this period were Coriolanus and Timon of Athens. The fourth period, 1606 to 1612, is the last period of Shakespeare's works life. In this period, he wrote romances and later comedies. After great tragedies, these plays are peaceful and philosophical. In Tempest, he told some philosophies about life. Contrary to tragedies, the evils are controlled and conquered by the good. This play also shows the decline in Shakespeare's work as there is loose construction and characterization. The drama of this period was Cymbeline, Pericles, The Winter's Tale, The Tempest, and the unfinished Henry VIII. The Tempest was the best play of this period. Apart from these dramas or plays, Shakespeare has also written non-dramatic poetry and sonnets. His two non-dramatic poems Venus and Adonis and The Rape of Lucrece, both are narrative. Shakespeare wrote a total of 154 sonnets. His sonnets are autobiographical as all are written about his friend and about a dark lady who is her beloved but betrayed him for his friend. Shakespeare's historical plays. It is also an important group of plays written in the different periods of Shakespeare's dramatic career. In his historical plays, Shakespeare covers the period of 350 years, 1200 to 1550, of English history. According to Professor Dowden, the theme of the historical plays is how a man may fail and how a man may succeed in attaining a practical mastery of the world. Chronologically, these plays are Henry VI, Part 1, 2 and 3, Richard III, Richard II, King John, Henry IV, Part 1 and 2, Henry V, and Henry VIII. These historical plays, Henry IV, Part 1 and 2, are one of Shakespeare's greatest works. Characteristics of Shakespeare's historical plays. The historical plays present the history of England from 1200 to 1550. Present their tumult and confusion, peace and conflict. These plays are named Mirror of Kings. The sources of Shakespearean historical plays are Raphael Hollinsh's Chronicles of England, Scotland and Ireland. Marlowe's Edward II was the model for his historical plays. His historical plays are the link between tragedies and comedies. Shakespeare's historical plays are mostly tragic plays except for Henry V. All the plays end with the imprisonment and the murder of the king. Action is predominant in historical plays. It is man's action that brings success or failure in life. Henry V was a great king. He was great because of his great actions and achievements. He achieved great victories as he possessed the qualities that made him able to suppress his enemies. Some common characteristics of the plays are that it shows the medieval period of England. Purpose of the historical plays is to make Englishmen more patriotic as the plays reflect the patriotic feeling of that age. Aims of the historical plays are to represent human life in action and thought within limits. It conveys a moral lesson. There is an impression of kingly glory and kingly responsibility in the plays. The play presents the idea of soldiership and horsemanship, wars, warriors, honor and worldly glory. Also, religious facts and duties are there. All kinds of womanhood idealized, pictures of motherhood, wifehood and maidenhood. The plays reflect the general temper of the time. The conception of comedy and the nature of Shakespearean comedy. Comedy is also a kind of drama with humor, pleasure, joy, satire, romantic love, and finally ending happily. Although there is some adversity that the characters have to face, finally, all ends happily. Shakespearean comedies are romantic comedies. It is a story of love, marriage, wit, humor, joy, light satire, irony, etc. Shakespeare's comedies can be classified into different parts like early immature comedies include Love's Labour Lost, The Comedy of Errors, and The Two Gentlemen of Verona. These are characterized as boisterous and farcical comedies, full of wit and wordplay, puns and conceits. Secondly, it is a joyous and sunny comedy that includes As You Like It, Much Ado About Nothing and Twelfth Night. These are the best comedies written by Shakespeare. The comedies are full of love, music, romantic atmosphere and comic spirit. Thirdly, there are somber comedies that include Measure for Measure, All's Well That Ends Well and Troilus and Cressida. These are painful and dark comedies, as ingredients of Shakespeare's tragedies are scattered in these comedies. Fourthly and lastly, the later comedies, also known as dramatic romances, are there. The plays include Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale and The Tempest. These plays were written after the great tragedies of Shakespeare. So these comedies are different from earlier comedies. Characteristic of Shakespearean comedy. The comedies of Shakespeare are the story of love and marriage, as we can find many pairs of lovers in all comedies. The atmosphere of all comedies is romantic. In the comedies of Shakespeare, feminine predominance, unlike the tragedies, the role of the heroine is more important and powerful than heroes. For example, Rosalind, As You Like It, Portia, The Merchant of Venice, Viola, Twelfth Night, Miranda, The Tempest, Hermia, Midsummer Night's Dream, and Beatrice, Much Ado About Nothing. Music and dance are also important characteristics of Shakespearean tragedies. Shakespearean tragedies are full of wit, humor, pranks, and harmless jesting. The professional jesters are present in all comedies of Shakespeare, like Touchstone, As You Like It, Fest, Twelfth Night, Lancelot, Merchant of Venice, and Trinculo, The Tempest. There is a blend of realism and fantasy in the comedies of Shakespeare. Overall, Shakespearean comedies aim to give pleasure and joy. It is a poetic, creative, and artistic vision. Comedies are a world of fancy and imagination. Presents willing suspension of disbelief, the moment which is called pet's faith. There are adversity, separation, and disappointments in the character's life. Settings are imaginative but related to real life, like the Forest of Arden, Thebes, Venice, etc. Fools and clowns teach wisdom and intelligence, e.g. Touchstone, As You Like It. Characterization of the comedies are complex mood and subtle character, e.g. Sir Toby Belcher's drunkenness and Sir Andrew Aguecheek's cowardice. Complex mood: Rosalind, Viola, Beatrice. Above all, Shakespearean comedies are sympathetic in tone and humanitarian in idealism. Shakespearean early comedies: these are sharpness in language and wit and humor in the expression of these comedies. Middle comedies: there is a deep motive in these comedies, and in the late comedies there is bitterness and cynicism in these comedies. The conception of tragedies and the nature of Shakespearean tragedies. The tragedy is a tale of death and suffering. It is a story of a good or great man who suffers mentally and spiritually due to some flaw in his character and finally meets his doom and death. According to Aristotle, tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. In the form of action and not of narration, through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation of these emotions. Shakespearean tragedies are also a tale of death and suffering, and even it is more than that. His tragedies do not show only pictures of the sufferings of the hero and heroine but also exhibit man's unsuccessful conflict with circumstances. The Shakespearean hero develops by the interaction of other characters in the play or by the struggle against certain circumstances and situations which are created purposely to give a chance to the hero to rise to the fullest heights as well as to sink to the lowest ebbs. Shakespearean tragic heroes die a glorious and honorable death. They are great in life as well as in death. The main cause of tragedy in Shakespeare's play is a fatal flaw in the character of a hero or heroine. The fatal flaw in the character is not a big fault or a vice of the character, but it is just the weakness of the character, which due to the adverse circumstances becomes the cause of tragedy. Like Hamlet's tragedy is his vacillating nature, Macbeth's overweening ambition become the cause of his tragedy, the suspicious nature of Othello and rash nature of Lear was the cause of their tragedy. Shakespeare wrote many tragedies in different periods of his career. Name of the tragedies he wrote are Richard III, Richard II, Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, Antony and Cleopatra, Timon of Athens and Coriolanus, and the four great tragedies, Hamlet, Othello, Macbeth, and King Lear. The themes of the tragedies are conflicts between good and evil, resulting in suffering and death. One another common theme in all Shakespeare's great tragedies is melodramatic scenes like the ghost, the madness or semi-madness of Hamlet, Lear, or Ophelia, the graveyard scene in Hamlet and the witches and numerous murders in Macbeth, the drunken scenes and riot in Othello, etc. Some important characteristics of Shakespearean tragedies are as follows. It is a tale of death and suffering. The tragedies are subject to the struggle of good and evil in the world. Its motives are the exhibition of the man in unsuccessful conflict with circumstances. The tragedies concern the fate of persons of high degree. King and prince and leader of state. Shakespearean tragedies are medieval in conception, as in modern tragedies, lives of ordinary people are portrayed, but in Shakespearean tragedies, heroes are of high degree like Hamlet is the Prince of Denmark, Othello is a warrior, Macbeth is the General of Scotland, and King Lear is the King of Great Britain. These are the story of one-person hero and heroine. The tragedies end with the death of the hero. The cause of tragedy some fatal flaw in the character of the hero and heroine. According to Shakespeare, character is destiny, and man is responsible for his action. Additional factors in Shakespeare's tragic plays are an abnormal condition of mind. For example, insanity in Lear, and hallucinations, sleepwalking, in Macbeth. Introduction of supernatural elements. Example, ghosts, witches, in Hamlet, Macbeth. Chance or accident, for example, a handkerchief dropped by Desdemona attacked Hamlet's ship so that Prince back to Denmark. Conflict and struggle. In Shakespeare's plays, conflicts are either external or internal. Even internal conflicts are more intense than external conflicts because it is psychological, spiritual, and moral. It affects the mind and soul of the hero. It is more painful than defeat or death. Shakespeare's four great tragedies, Othello, Macbeth, Hamlet, and Lear, are the best example of internal conflict. Othello's conflict was his love and suspicion for Desdemona. Macbeth told better be with the dead as if bitten at once by 100 scorpions. Hamlet's conflict is his wish to take revenge, and his vacillation is to do or not to do. King Lear's conflict is between pride and filial ingratitude. Examples of external conflicts are Romeo and Juliet and Richard II. Heroes of the tragedies are exceptional beings, intensification of life, object, passion or habit of the mind, identification. Shakespearean tragedies finally produce or lead to feelings awe and pity. The feelings of awe are aroused by the fall of the great hero, whereas we feel pity for the way by which the hero meets his end. After the death of the hero, we feel pain in our hearts as well as we admire the qualities of the great hero. That time the state of mind is calm, and all passion is spent. Will any punished except Iago and Edmund? Shakespeare's dramatic romances and last plays. Shakespeare's last plays include Pericles, Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, and The Tempest. However, these plays show the decline of Shakespeare's dramatic power, although, in this phase, his philosophical genius was at its highest. Characteristics of dramatic romances. The romances of these plays are true in the Elizabethan sense. The basic theme of these romances is reconciliation, as at the end of all plays, the misunderstandings are removed and the parties reconcile. Another major theme of these plays is loss and finding, restoration and reunion. The children of these plays are lost at an early stage and found at the end of the play. Philosophical allegories and symbolism are also important features of these last plays. Finally, one common characteristic of all these plays is a happy ending. The atmosphere of the plays is peaceful, calm and serene, sunny and genial. There is sympathy, kindness and humanity and gentility in the plays. The plays are also full of emotion, feeling of human life, reconciliation, atonement, forgiveness, beauty, love, mirth, the grief of youth and philosophy. There are sufferers, aged, experienced and tired in the play. E.g. Queen Catherine, Prospero and Hermione. Charming innocence and ignorance is present in Perdita and Miranda. Some more characteristics of Shakespearean sonnets are mostly autobiographical, as these show Shakespeare's thoughts, love, pain, and mental conflict about his friend Earl of Southampton and his beloved the dark lady who betrayed him for Shakespeare's friend Earl of Southampton. The central theme of Shakespeare's sonnets is love and admiration. One another theme is the power of time. Shakespeare addressed time as the greatest destroyer, as all the things in the world like youth and beauty are destroyed by time. Further, he also states that his sonnet is more powerful than time. Time conquers everything, but his sonnets would conquer the time, as his sonnets would preserve his friend's youth and beauty forever, and the coming generations would know about the merits of his friend. Shakespeare is of all ages and Shakespeare's universality. He is not of an age but of all times. Ben Jonson transcended the limits of time and space. A rich heritage of mankind. Universal appeal with soul of the age. Poet of mankind life. Neither a lender nor borrower, but was himself both. Timelessness, didn't wait for time, change his time according to the situation, follow the three unities of time, place, and action. Product of Renaissance. Universality lies in the acceptance of life in its totality. Expressed human soul with intense emotion which is an echo of their own emotions, their laughter and tears, passion and prejudices, longings and aspiration. His plays Elizabethan conventions, passions, prejudices and nuances of expression. His poetry an expression of imagination. Universality consists of humanity. Friendly approach with baseness and limitations. Tolerance and forgiveness are cardinal precepts. Faith in moral order, one of a universal appeal. Retains sanity of good sense. His love for life with all its colors and beauty. Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid painted blind. His tragedy the triumph of goodness, beauty, love and life. There is a symbolic overtone, an embalmed evening in Romeo and Juliet, a note of thunder, lightning and rain in Macbeth, a dream in Midsummer Night Dream, garish light of day, and morn in The Merchant of Venice. There is a vision of life, wonderful characterization, broad humanity, a sense of humor and tolerance, the catholicity of outlook, and dramatic art in his poetry. Shakespearean humor. Shakespearean humor is not limited to comedy but equally to tragedy, e.g. the porter scene in Macbeth and the gravedigger scene in Hamlet. Tolerant, sympathetic, genial, sparking. Lively, polished and cultured. Devoid of cynicism. Like his total genius, is dramatic. Shakespeare's character. Individuality and universality, specialities. Good and bad. Unfailing humanity. Presents different phases of human life like credulity, Othello, ambition, Macbeth, philosophic, Hamlet, simplicity, King Lear, nobility, Brutus, friendship, Antonio, villainy, Iago, beauty, Miranda and Perdita, fidelity, Imogen, devotion, Desdemona, fieriness, Lady Macbeth, intellectuality, Portia, biting sarcasm, Beatrice. Shakespeare's humanity. His love for human beings. The infinite feeling of sympathy for his characters. E.g. what a piece of work is man. Shakespeare's language and style. Grand and majestic, above the rich of modern writers. Command of language, the magic of expression. Despite philosophic penetration, never lost lyrics, grace, sweetness and exuberance. He was the man who of all modern and perhaps ancient poets held the largest and most comprehensive soul. Dryden. Was Shakespeare successful in his lifetime? Shakespeare had achieved enough fame as a playwright and actor by 1592 for his jealous rival Robert Greene to disparage him as an upstart crow and Johannes Factotum, a Johnny Do-It-All. A groat is a little currency. Shakespeare wrote 11 plays by 1592, including Romeo and Juliet, Richard III, and A Midsummer Night's Dream, even though it is difficult to pinpoint the order of his works. His plays were well received. The opening night box office for Henry VI, Part 1 at the Rose in 1592 was £3.16 8d, the highest ever recorded for the season. The epidemic caused the London playhouses to be closed for a significant portion of the time between September 1592 and June 1594. Venus and Adonis and the Rape of Lucrece are two epic poems by Shakespeare that were released at this time. Through the 1590s, Shakespeare's popularity increased. Along with composing other plays, he joined and became a shareholder in Lord Chamberlain's Men, who frequently appeared before Queen Elizabeth. He also published several poems and distributed the unpublished sonnet series. His achievements allowed him to purchase New Place, Stratford's second-largest home, in 1597. However, this achievement was not without tragedy. In 1596, his 11-year-old son Hamlet passed away. Death. Shakespeare reportedly passed away on 23 April 1616, when he was reportedly 52 years old. This day also happened to be St. George's Day, celebrated in England. He signed a will a month before he passed away, stating that he was in perfect health at the outset. No surviving source from his time tells how or why he passed away. Shakespeare, Drayton, and Ben Jonson had a good time together and, it seems, drank too much because Shakespeare passed away from a fever there after half a century, the Vicar of Stratford, John Ward, noted in his journal. Shakespeare knew Jonson and Drayton, thus, it is probable that he developed a fever due to that encounter. Shakespeare's comparatively quick passing is mentioned in one of the tributes that began to flow from other writers and were reproduced in the first folio. It reads, "We wondered, Shakespeare, that thou wentest so soon from the world's stage to the grave's tiring room." Shakespeare left behind two daughters, Susanna and Judith, and his wife, Anne. Hamlet, his son, had perished in 1596. Elizabeth Hall, a granddaughter of Susanna and John Hall, was his last surviving descendant. Shakespeare has no direct living descendants, but the diarist John Aubrey recalled in his brief lives that his godson, William Davenant, contented to be considered Shakespeare's true son. Shakespeare would stay at the Crown Tavern in Oxford, on the route between London and Stratford, when he was going between his home in Stratford and the city, and Davenant's mother was the wife of a vintner there. Shakespeare is buried in the Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon's chancel. He was given the privilege of being buried in the chancel, not because of his popularity as a dramatist but because he had paid £440, a sizable sum of money at the time, to buy a share of the church's tithe. Shakespeare is depicted in a bust, writing on a wall monument possibly erected by his family next to his grave. A fresh quill pen is always inserted into the bust's writing hand on the fictitious occasion of his birthday. On his tombstone, the epitaph is thought to have been inscribed. Conclusion. William Shakespeare's life was a surprising journey that changed the world of literature and theatre. Brought into the world in 1564, he turned into a popular writer, poet, and entertainer in Elizabethan England. Shakespeare's works, including his plays and poems, showed an unmatched dominance of language, feeling, and human instinct. His plays, like Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, and Macbeth, keep on enamoring crowds worldwide with their ageless topics and complex characters. Shakespeare's productive profession and significant impact on English literature have set his status as the best writer ever. His heritage perseveres, with his works being examined, performed, and celebrated hundreds of years after his passing in 1616. Dear viewers, we have tried our best to provide you an informative video. Please comment that how did you find this video, because your comments and opinion are very important to us. If you like the video, please subscribe our channel and give a thumb up so that you may be updated for our every effort regarding upcoming video. Take care of your good self.